A colossal golf clubhouse built entirely from timber.
Cracking and creaking. Wait for something to go pop.
Can a Canadian team haul it almost 40 kilometers to the golf course without shattering it into matchwood?
Get back! Get back!
A historic farmstead of timber buildings more than 150 years old.
A building of this age is a valuable, precious antique.
Can an American team move these fragile structures up a steep hill without them falling apart? Both teams face severe storms.
We've got a major problem here. They're calling for an inch of rain.
And serious setbacks. Two unwieldy wooden wonders. Two teams with a mission to move them. Two epic endeavors that will test the nerves of the people who dare to do monster moves. Morden is a small prairie town in Manitoba, Canada. The nearest city is over 120 kilometers away. One of the few weekend attractions is Minnewaska Golf Course.
Get one off into the sunset, buddy.
All right.
I really hadn't been golfing that much before I moved to town here. People do like coming to a place that provides scenery and a beautiful setting.
The golf club draws visitors and business to this isolated outpost. This is an 18-hole town.
Growing up as a kid in Manitoba, and I've always loved this course.
Unfortunately, the clubhouse is not exactly up to par.
This old clubhouse has certainly seen better days. We have the roof collapsing, falling in. A lot of the wood trim and stuff is falling off outside. We have wall shifting. The pipes are old and rusty. This place bangs when the dishwasher upstairs is turned off. Literally, the clubhouse shakes.
The club's members have spent 3 years trying to raise $3 million to build a new clubhouse, but they still have a long way to go. Until one day they hit on a brilliant idea. This restaurant 37 kilometers away has closed down and is now up for sale. Why not buy the building and move it to their golf course for a quarter of the price?
In terms of getting the incoming building moved to this site. Well, I certainly think it's going to be a lot of work.
This building would make a perfect clubhouse. It covers over 700 square meters and has the spacious grandeur of a medieval hall. Yet this old-style timber frame construction, where everything's held together with wooden pegs, will be a challenge for any mover. If the plan works, this could turn Minnewaska into the Gleneagles of Manitoba.
Well, I couldn't be more excited about the arrival of the new clubhouse. We'll have one of the best facilities in the province. It'll be a 12-month facility, which is something this town needs.
To reach the golf course, it's a long drive for this large wooden hall. Almost 40 kilometers across difficult terrain, through deep valleys, and onto the golf course itself. An ambitious undertaking. Club members decide there's only one man for the job, local heavy hauler Harold Minty.
We've got to trick this building into the thought that it's still on this concrete when we're ready to go.
Size rarely scares Minty, but this is a mammoth structure to be rolled down rural roads.
There's basically 3 ways that this building could be moved, and one is to load the building up and transport it in one piece.
It's best to move large buildings intact to preserve their structural integrity. The owner of this house in Montreal shunted it across his garden to make room for a garage. This was a short route with no obstacles, so moving the complete house was easy. But this timber-framed hall is much too big to move in this way.
The next scenario is to disassemble the whole building.
Wooden buildings buildings are often completely dismantled, timber by timber, to move long distances. This wooden church in Fairview, Canada, was too large to move to a neighboring parish intact. So movers exploded dynamite inside the building to loosen the thousands of nails holding it together. They then disassembled it, one plank at a time, for its 25-kilometer move across the countryside. It took 10 carpenters over a year to put the infamous blasted church back together. But a year was too long for golfers anxious to move into their new clubhouse before the next season begins. This leaves Minty with one final option. He must cut the hall into separate sections and move each piece individually.
We would be physically cutting it from front of the building to the back of the building, and then that'll get us down to 3 pieces that we can manage.
Players are confident that their new clubhouse will make it to the final green for the start of the next golf season.
All things said, this should go in. Just like the building coming over here. All things said, that should work.
That's it. That's the one. That's in.
In fact, they're so confident, they demolished their old clubhouse before they've even teed the new one up.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Great to see the building go down. Can't wait till the new one gets here.
Be a good sign of things to come.
Tear that clubhouse down!
For Chris and Minty, this is a high-risk strategy. If the new building doesn't make it, the golfers could be left with nothing at all. In Staunton, Virginia, a big move is about to begin. Back in 1832, the grandson of a German settler named John Barger built this classic colonial farm. The buildings now form part of Staunton's Frontier Culture Museum. They are some of the last remaining structures built by pioneers.
When I think about John Barger, who is the man who built the American home, he did that with a few horses, a wagon or two, probably a lot of friends. His vision was he wanted life to be better for his family. So the American farm as we see it today was his dream.
A house, barn, and several smaller outbuildings make up the farmstead. But visitors don't flock to the museum like they used to.
We need to regenerate. We need to enliven ourselves to attract new people and at the same time generate an additional amount of revenue for the museum.
The village is tucked away on the outskirts of town, so potential visitors drive past unaware of its existence.
Currently, the American farm is nestled in a hollow. Its buildings are sort of co-located and sort of protected in that hollow.
To save the Frontier Farm, curators Peggy Sheets and John Avoli have taken a brave decision. They will literally raise its profile in front of the highway.
We're going to move it across the property. It's going to sit on top of a hill. It's going to be visible to thousands of eyes every day.
Imagine driving down Interstate 81 and 64 and all of a sudden you say, wow, what is that? Well, it's an 1850s farm. It's a 1720 log cabin. And it stirs your curiosity. And all of a sudden you're there and say, gosh, there it is. Let's go look at it.
The Frontier Farm lies over a kilometer away across boggy, undulating countryside. Hauling these wooden farm buildings to the top of the hill will definitely require some of that old pioneering spirit. For the museum's curators, it's a $200,000 gamble. For East Coast house trucker Jim Matico, it will be the ultimate test of his skill.
We might have to get Houdini or somebody to levitate this thing off the ground a couple feet for me, if you get my drift.
Of course, Jim can always rely on traditional moving methods.
At the time period these buildings were built, they would probably use wooden rollers.
In the 18th and 19th centuries, large buildings were often moved on rollers. In 1869, Weavers relocated this 7-story brick hotel in Boston, Massachusetts. They positioned 900 steel rollers beneath a 5,000-ton hotel pelham to slide it 14 feet, just to widen the busy street. Incredibly, the hotel remained open throughout the 3-month move. Plumbers fitted extendable water and gas pipes so that guests could still check in and out whilst the hotel was in transit. This might work on a level urban street, but rolling hills are a different proposition.
When you're going uphill, there's a chance it could roll back downhill on you, and once it starts to get away from you, it'll increase in speed and momentum, and it's like a runaway train.
Jim knows the only safe way of moving these buildings is on a truck. But the image of a runaway farm still haunts Peggy.
When we talked about moving the structures intact, I was like astonished that we would entertain the idea. There is a lot of concern and trepidation about how we would do that. Would the buildings be preserved? Would there be damage?
Jim's first task is to lift the farmhouse off its foundation so that a truck can pull it out of the hollow. But he discovers a weak link that will make this more difficult.
Obviously, they put one building next to the other, so we put a brace to tie it together. If I came in here, started jacking it up, what could happen is this part here could open up like a pie.
Jim has discovered that the farmhouse is actually 2 separate structures disguised as one. A house attached to a house. The 2 buildings are connected by little more than a few pins. So unless the floor of the farmhouse is jacked up evenly, the entire structure could rip apart. To prevent this from happening, they must reinforce the bottom of the house with a steel lifting platform. Hydraulic jacks will prise the house off its foundations. They must lift in perfect unison to ensure both halves of the farmhouse rise together.
We still got to break through these stone walls, to insert some supports.
Punching holes in basement walls that have stood for over 2 centuries is tough.
Yeah, it's true. It's a good little workout.
Good stonemason did this job. He wasn't a part-time mason. He was full-time. Killing Jim Matico.
But just as the lifting rig takes shape, Jim runs into an immovable object.
This is the mother of all load of stone. We got a hell of a load right here. Probably one of the most difficult parts of the move is supporting this massive stone fireplace.
A stone chimney runs down the center of the farmhouse. It weighs 60 tons. If the fireplace and chimney is left unsupported during the lift, it could topple over and destroy the entire house. To give the chimney the support it needs, they must construct a steel rig through the base of the fireplace and lift it separately. They will have to lift the walls and fireplace simultaneously to prevent the fireplace falling through the floor.
We call them needles. It's just another support beam for the chimney.
They position 10 lifting jacks underneath the beams.
We want to get everything right because we're getting ready to come up. Down a hair. Oh,
The building is rising up at a dangerous angle. They must level the rear of the farmhouse before trying it again.
Hold it a minute. Bring your right hand side up a little more. Oh, I think that's pretty close.
They balance the building on wooden towers, but it is vulnerable to the elements. A bad weather report is the last thing Jim needs.
We've got a major problem here. They're calling for an inch of rain.
Right, I understand that. That's right.
And the damn thing, guess where it all drains?
Right in this bottom right here.
Right in here. But the safe place
Uh-huh.
Go right through. See where the red car is?
Yeah.
Just set it right there in the parking lot.
Right on that spot right there.
Right there on that spot.
Well, let's do that then.
A storm threatens to turn the excavation site into a mud bath. Unless Jim moves fast, the farmhouse will be caught in a quagmire.
Yes, I'm thinking it's starting to get dark. It's gray looking. They're calling for rain, so hopefully we can get her over on the parking lot before it kicks in.
Now it's full speed ahead.
They dare not move this fragile homestead any faster than walking pace. The slightest jolt could trigger it to collapse. Halfway to the parking lot, they get their first taste of Virginia mud.
Easy, easy. Oh, good on roll 16.
They daren't stop or slow down. If they do, the truck wheels will sink into the clay.
Oh boy, I stopped the wrong time, I guess. Hot, man. Yeah.
Watch that chain in case it breaks. It'll pop you good.
Hey, he got it.
They make it to the parking lot before the storm breaks. Now all they have to do is feed a dozen or so parking meters.
Come on here. I want clap. I want pockets. I want pockets. We got to have main house where we want it. Next worry is the loading of the barn. Probably it'll be really slick coming up this hill when we get ready to tackle the barn. So, well, you know, we still got a man-sized job ahead of us. Believe me. Believe me.
In Manitoba, Harold Minty is working with engineer Tim Cran to carve the future clubhouse into 3 separate sections for its journey to the golf course. They disagree on the best place to cut to minimize damage.
One side or the other, I don't think it really makes any difference.
Well, if we go on this side, then you're cutting. I don't want you messing with this right here. So I want to be on this side of the...
What's the difference?
Tim realizes the weight of the hall's 50-ton vaulted roof is carried entirely by the outer walls. Dividing the building into 3 will reduce the roof's structural integrity. With no walls or beams supporting the roof, there's a danger that 3 sections could collapse. To prevent this, the team must build temporary support walls either side of the cuts. They hope these walls will strengthen each section for the move. Once the support walls are in place, the team brave the icy roof for some circular saw surgery.
This is the first cut.
It's vital they make clean cuts through all beams and joists. If the 2 halves remain joined anywhere, it could cause serious damage when the wings are pulled away.
If you look underneath here, you can see the wall exactly where it's going to be separated, like this from that.
But just as they finish cutting, they notice something alarming.
Here we've got a slight little problem. The building seems to be spreading.
By cutting the building into 3, the weight of the roof is pushing the walls out. The structure is much weaker than they thought. They now fear these weakened sections may not survive the journey. The cross-country roads are bendy and bumpy. This constant pounding could cause the walls to twist permanently out of shape, making reassembly impossible. The team decide to pull them inwards with steel cables. They must tension them so that they're taut enough to hold the walls in place, but not so tight that they implode.
We're using the cables, we're squeezing the building together, so hopefully it'll keep carrying along as long as this timber bolts up to the pressure.
Minty's foreman, Rick, listens for the telltale warning signs.
Cracking and concrete and wait for something to go pop. Okay, I tell him to hang on a minute. Things are still cracking here.
This seems 10 times stronger than what it was an hour ago.
With the straps tensioned as far as they dare, the team is now ready to lift each section off its foundations. The first task is to build a lifting rig under each section. But the wooden walls are flimsy and weak. There's a risk they could tear apart during the lift. To avoid damaging the building, they will build a steel skeleton inside the walls to provide a rigid frame for the lifting rig. Unfortunately, just as the 5-ton beams arrive, so does this year's first snow.
Well, we've had probably close to 10 inches of snow, and not making things any easier.
When they attempt to thread the first steel beam through, they hit a major obstacle.
This may have been an oversight. This post is right smack dab in the middle of our line for all the other posts inside. It's a very tight fit on this one. What are we, Marsh? 14.4. Then we can get the next one in. And hopefully it'll be a little easier.
Once the beams are in place, they can begin the big pull.
We got everything chained and bolted and plated. Then we're going to be able to slide this over to the side 8 feet.
Now they're ready to begin a gigantic tug of war, with 2 winch trucks pulling each wing off the central hall.
Watch me!
But the icy conditions make this impossible.
It's hell with snow because it makes it slicker than normal. Rubber on snow, no traction.
After almost 2 hours, the drivers gain control and the wings pull away cleanly.
Okay, good.
It's taken 3 months to move just 3 feet. Tomorrow, the fragile building must survive a 37-kilometer cross-country trek. In Virginia, storms threaten to wreck Jim Matiko's attempt to move the frontier farm up the hill. They've brought the farmhouse to a parking lot, but before they can move it any further, they want to lift the outbuildings off their foundations.
We have a wooden timbered structure with logs stacked one on top of each other. Some of the logs are getting pretty old and they're brittle. They've been weakened.
The barn is built from more than 1,000 interlocking wooden beams. The beams are over 10 meters long and weigh more than 1,000 pounds. The only thing holding them in place is their sheer weight. It makes the structure extremely precarious to move. If there's too much pressure on the walls or a beam dislodges, the structure could collapse like a tower of play school blocks. To avoid this, they will have to fit jacks under every post and beam. But before they can position the jacks, they must clear away the old foundations.
It's not breaking like we expected. It's a miserable day in sunny, beautiful Stanton, Virginia.
Jimmy's most powerful jackhammers make little impression.
I didn't expect this, my friend. Ah, damn!
While Jimmy's team struggle with the barn, volunteers lend a hand moving one of the smaller outbuildings, a historic meat shed. In true pioneering spirit, they insist on using traditional traction.
All day, they can pull about 10% of their body weight. So these horses weigh 2,000 pounds, so they would pull 200 pounds all day.
They plan to use a sledge to pull the meat shed to the new site. Using horses is not without risk, especially with a meat shed as fragile as this one. If the horses step out of line, the shed could split in two, just like the meat carcasses that used to hang inside. To prevent this, the team must add a metal anchor point to the base of the building. Padded harnesses keep the animals on track and protect the shed from any sudden movements. All fine in theory, but when Mac and his fellow heavy haulers line up, they're not so sure they like this latest task.
Come up. Mac! Mac! Come up! Come up! Come here, Mac! Mac! Come up! Whoa!
After a rocky start, the driver manages to gain control, and they set off to the site. Meanwhile, Jimmy's backup team is lifting the well from its foundations.
Here we move to this little stone building that is just the smallest of buildings. Something can go wrong.
This well is built from heavy stone blocks, so although it's small, it's incredibly dense. The concentrated weight makes it hard to lift. If a hydraulic jack raises too quickly, it could dislodge a rock. Adding a lifting platform will secure the load, but make it even heavier. Just as the well floats gently into the air, they have a scare.
She caught right here, I bet you. No?
One of the jacks has failed.
These two jacks, the tops are welded on the top of them, and for some reason it top blew off of it. Small buildings can be big problems. That's right.
Well, all's well that ends well. Meanwhile, over at the barn, Jimmy's slowly winning his battle with the concrete.
This is like a Blue Monday for us. Nothing's going right according to plan.
It takes over a week of battering before the barn is finally free.
What we're doing right now is kind of put some pressure to it, but we don't want to put too much. Give me a little more pressure. Bring the far side up a hair. Yeah, roll that one. We're up. We're in the air.
At last, all the outbuildings have been lifted free of their foundations. Now all Jimmy has to worry about is how to move them across countryside that looks like a roller coaster.
We don't want it to, do a downhill. I don't want a downhill move.
It's the day of the clubhouse move in Manitoba. Rick and Minty's team have a road permit that only gives them 9 hours to complete the journey. With temperatures almost 30 degrees below zero, it's going to be a slippery schlep.
We got like a 40-kilometer wind right now, so it's making it a little bit uncomfortable.
Their first challenge is to take the building down to the main road. Overnight, the snow has compacted and frozen into solid ice.
It's like -29 with the wind chill today. And it just hard packs and it comes like a skating rink. Zero traction. I love the winter.
They call in extra pulling power to drag the hull off its old foundations.
But we gotta get some traction. So we throw this down under the tires. Hopefully that'll help with the Bobcat, with the Freightliner on the winch truck.
Although the road is only 800 meters away, the old site's driveway is too narrow to accommodate this convoy. Power lines block the passage. The only way out is to clear a path through the snow and take the buildings off-road. They must follow a route that's as level as possible and ensure all the snow is removed. Any ditches filled with soft snow could tip the building into a snowdrift.
We're just going to pull a big Huey and then head out into our road across the field. Well, finally, after 9 days of bolting, chaining, sticking steel in, we're finally rolling down the road. It feels good.
They pick up pace, but just as they turn the corner onto the highway, disaster strikes.
Son of a bitch! The bunk cables just broke.
When the front wheels careered into a ditch, the impact snapped the cable securing the load to the truck.
Well, that didn't make a good day. Bunk cable failed. Shouldn't have, but it did, you know. Could have had a broken strand that we didn't see.
It's not the convoy. The circus would be more like it.
Golf club manager Chris Worley arrives to find his clubhouse stranded in a bunker.
I don't know what happened. We just got here. We just saw it fall.
Let's hope that they can get this thing hoisted back up and rolling again.
It takes them over an hour to raise the haul out of the hole.
We're good to go now.
It's 2 o'clock before they make it to the open road. They now have only 3 hours before their permit expires.
I don't know, we'll see how it works out because it's glare ice basically coming up that hill.
The road ahead passes out of the valley up a hill with a gradient of 12%. If the trucks start skidding, their loads could be dislodged. With the light fading fast, they decide to negotiate the hill one at a time. The last thing they need is a hillside pylon.
We're keeping the road clear behind just in case there's any kind of catastrophic failure. It's taken a little bit of time to get all 3 sections up. Pretty slow, pretty heavy pull there for that grader.
They finally make it to the top of the hill as the sun sets. It's taken them a whole day to travel just 3.5 kilometers. Their road permit has run out, and the weather forecast for tomorrow looks worse. In Virginia, the weather has also taken a turn for the worse as Jim Matico's team prepares to move the Frontier farmstead.
I don't like it snowing on my parade. It really, we're gonna have a hard time getting up the hill. It's gonna make a mess.
Jim makes sure they enjoy some farmhouse comforts before hitting the road.
Anytime you come to the mountains, you better be prepared. And so we've got a little fire going to kind of get things warmed up a little bit. We got a good fire going. Now, hopefully, we're gonna have a good move. How about that?
Despite the icy weather, the locals are curious to find out how an entire farm can be transplanted.
I'm just worried if it's gonna fall apart.
So I got my money on you.
Okay, all right, okay.
Don't let me down.
This is what everybody's been waiting for. The big move.
The route may not be far, but it's lined with obstacles.
I'll overlook this light we got here. Let's get this way a little bit.
first challenge is a sharp bend.
So we've got two things to weigh here.